Hi, this is Dr. Stephen with Outclick Magazine. Today we want to bring you Pat Zeiler, who is the Executive Director here at History Fort Lauderdale. We're going to be talking about Where the Boys Are. It is the 60th anniversary of the movie that was taped here in Fort Lauderdale. Patricia, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. We were chatting before about all of the amazing history that's here in Fort Lauderdale, some of the cultural shifts and changes that have gone on. It's been fascinating. But first, I want you to tell everyone about what is History Fort Lauderdale, what are the services you provide and events. I think you could probably talk forever about that. But give us a snapshot for someone who has maybe not heard of it. What is History Fort Lauderdale about?
So History Fort Lauderdale is the public name of the Fort Lauderdale Historical Society. It's the oldest historical agency in the county, formed in 1962 by a group of pioneer families that realized some of the old timers were starting to age significantly, and the stories might be lost. So the Historical Society was formed 1962. First thing they did was publish a book called Checkered Sunshine. Since then, we have published multiple books. But the Historical Society, or History Fort Lauderdale today, is 3 museums of history: 1 general history, 1 Pioneer House Museum, and 1 Schoolhouse Museum, right on the New River, just 4 blocks east of the Broward Center for the Performing Arts. Our main museum is the New River Inn, which is the 1905 building, the very first building in Broward County admitted to the National Register. Kind of a unique building, the first hollow concrete blocks building built by a shipbuilder and not by an architect, and a cool piece of Fort Lauderdale history just in the building itself. We are also the certified visitor information center for Visit Florida, so we see well over 100,000 visitors a year. Some of them actually visiting the museum, some of them coming in for information on what to do around town, and that's a cool part of our business too. The last piece is we are also a research agency. So our Hoke Library, we're 6 buildings total in our campus. Our Hoke Research Library is a go-to source for authors, genealogists, property attorneys, you name it, as far as the history of land use, the history of the town, those kind of things. So any day of the week. Today we have a Dr. Pittman in. She's working on the history of the Northwest neighborhood, African American neighborhood. We'll have an author in. We are constantly. I was consulted 2 weeks ago by the Wall Street Journal on an architectural issue. So we never know, who's going to walk in the door or give us a call. But the library itself is the largest collection, or the largest collecting museum in Broward County. And the library itself is filled with approximately 3,500 rare books, most of them out of print. Our collection includes about approximately 5,000 sets of architectural blueprints, historical buildings, 2,500 historic maps going back to the 1500s. We have a Spanish map in the collection. We have, don't laugh, also a newspaper clippings files started in 1915 and still updated today. So I know paper is sort of not, but historical studies love paper. So there's a lot of paper here. But the library does a lot of work, and believe it or not, our clippings file is probably the most used piece of resource we have for the community, because it is completely bibliography and searchable, and pretty thorough, and has newspaper clippings were taken from the Fort Lauderdale Daily News, the Miami Herald, so it's a good mix of the stories of those times from 1915 on.
So you are preserving the past, you're working with artists and authors, researchers, and you are serving the people who are coming to visit and helping to promote travel. So you have a lot of areas that you are serving, and in several different facilities, it sounds like that.
Correct. Yes, and I neglected to mention, I should have. So our main museum is 3 floors, and our downstairs floor was kind of not engaged when I first came here 6 years ago. So what we've managed to do there is we have transitional exhibits, and we tie them to the National History Month. So, for example, down there right now today is Native American exhibition of Seminole and Miccosukee visual artists. And of course, November is Native American History Month. In the new year, in February, we always, for the African American History Month in February, we have a partnership with Broward County Schools, and we feature some of the amazing talented artists that are at the Magnet School at Dillard Center for the Arts. Visual artists, amazing. So then on our third floor was sort of a storage area, not really engaged. And today it houses an artist co-op called the New River Arts Co-op. And what we tried to engage there were artists that would have been necessary to the 1905 New River Inn. So there's a quilter there. There's a glass artist there. There's, so there's a lot of different mediums of the folks who are working upstairs. And their seventh partner is a blacksmith, obviously because of the historic house. The blacksmith's not permitted inside, but he's outside for our outdoor engagement opportunities. So it's kind of a cool, this is kind of how arts were done in 1905, and it carries on sort of the story of the original New River Inn.
You have school children under non-COVID conditions that come through, I think.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, we see thousands of students a year. Of course, this year is a little different, an anomaly, but hopefully as soon as we have a vaccine, we'll see those again.
There's a lot of, you and I were chatting before the video, the scope of all the things that you have going on. I'm not surprised. I can't believe there's not like 5 of you trying to get all of these projects done. But we were chatting about the fascinating history of Fort Lauderdale. I'm from Kentucky, which is very different. And I learned a lot just in our chat before the video. Up and coming is your exhibition at the Galleria Fort Lauderdale Mall, Where the Boys Are, the famous movie with Connie Francis. It was released in 1960. This is obviously its 60th anniversary, if I have the numbers right. Tell us about the movie. We can talk all day about the movie. Tell us about the movie. It was so iconic. Tell us about that, Patricia.
Well, first of all, it was a really fun experience for folks 14 and up in 1960, because there was a call put out by the movie producers for general extras. So there were still people today who were extras on that movie who loved to have a reunion of extras. So there are folks locally to us who were actually in the movie. They used a lot of extras on the beach because it was to look like a spring break, which would have been like the months March, April, sometime in there, but they recorded in the summertime. So they needed a lot of locals too. So that was a real fun experience. The newspapers and reporting, everything was about, this was the biggest thing that had come to town like ever. So it was, the event itself was really significant. And then the post-event, the actual premiere of the movie, which went nationwide distribution on the 28th of December of the same year. But the premiere was here, which was, it was a small town to have a movie premiere with all the Hollywood stars and the glamour, was December 21st, 1960 at the Gateway Theater, which is still on Sunrise Boulevard. Sort of, lovely place to go visit and still see movies. And it was a really, really big deal for the town. You can imagine it was still kind of a small town in those days. And it was a really big deal. So that was the first kind of, immediate effect locally of having a Hollywood team come in and do this kind of a movie. But then post the release, what nobody local expected was that it was immediately, the beaches were inundated with college students in the following year after the movie had been released. So it was kind of like not even wildly in the imagination of local folks that they would have so many people come and try to come to Fort Lauderdale Beach on spring break. So it kind of created a whole new industry on Fort Lauderdale Beach hotels had to make adjustments, because even as you see in the beach, these are college students on spring break. This is not grandma and grandpa who are going to bed at 9 o'clock at night, right? So it's a little bit different. So a different kind of, different crowd to cater to. And that went on for many, many years and was a huge boon to the economy here. It was really sort of the birth of the modern tourism industry in Broward County. And when you think in 1900, when the first folks came here, they came for sports fishing. It wasn't like they weren't coming for the beach or the climate, they were coming for a whole different, this is a whole different piece of business, which still today is a major driving economic force in our county. So I think it's kind of the immediate impact locally, and then the ripples that went all the way through to today, which is, still, who knows? I mean, we've changed a lot, but I think spring break is still a big time for us. I'm not sure it's as big of a college crowd as it is just an international crowd now on Fort Lauderdale Beach, which is kind of cool to see that transition.
Yeah. Now, I used to be the organist and choir director at the Sanctuary Church here on Federal. And I remember people here telling the stories and showing the picture when it was almost a dirt road. And people saying, oh, people will never go to church way out there. And they thought that was so far away from downtown when that church was built. Of course, it became this huge congregation. Well, of course, that's not anywhere near way too far from downtown. That's now prime real estate. But I thought that was interesting when the church was built. It was so far from downtown, no one would go way out there. Well, of course, right now that's the prime highway. If you keep in perspective what people thought was way out there on the country road, that now is the prime real estate that's right there next to the car dealerships, and how far we have gone. But yeah, so this was such a game changer for us as far as travel, tourism, food and beverage, hotel, because it drew the attention into Fort Lauderdale. What a great and fun city this was. It was at the Elbow Room, which is down right there on Fort Lauderdale Beach. If you want to maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Elbow Room was sort of ground zero for the filming of the movie as far as the external shots. So in the exhibition, you're going to see a lot of photographs of Elbow Room and the film crew working and the extras lining up with the stars of the movie kind of to do a shot and getting some direction. So that was really ground zero, because it really was at the time sort of the main hub on the beach, the Elbow Room right there in Las Olas Boulevard, sort of iconic. Las Olas was the very first causeway that the Causeway Bridge on Las Olas was completed in 1917. So it was the very first way to get to the beach by motor vehicle. Up until 1917, in those early days, the only way to get to Fort Lauderdale Beach for the early pioneers was by boat. So Las Olas was always sort of the main drag, especially back in those days. And it was the way folks got to beach. Because I remember, when I came as a kid, it was either, I came in 1963 as a young child to Fort Lauderdale. So it was either Las Olas or the 17th Street Causeway. But for folks who were more pioneer than me, 17th Street Causeway was later because it didn't come until after World War II. So the main way to the beach was Las Olas. So that, Elbow Room was Elbow Room. And across the street from it, there was a hotel. I sort of remember it as a Holiday Inn when I was a young girl, but since now it's a parking lot. But in the photographs, you'll see across from Elbow Room, there was this Holiday Inn hotel. And then there were, sort of a lot of sort of motel, 2- and 3-story, sort of drive, the motel sort of post World War II. A lot of the beach back then was like that. Was not the tall towers and the iconic names that you think of today on Fort Lauderdale Beach, like the Four Seasons and the Conrad Hilton and the W and the Atlantic Hotel, all those beautiful iconic places that are there today. It was more sort of mom and pop drive-in sort of motels that were on the beach in those days. Not so many. Like there was a Lauderdale Beach Hotel, which was an iconic architectural piece of the mid-century modern, sort of like South Beach, that same kind of style. The facade of that is still there. It's wrapped around an amazing condominium project that was done by the Related Group today. Okay. And then the post-World War II that still sort of looks the same is the what today it's called the B Ocean, but in everybody who's been here a long time calls it the Yankee Clipper, the one that's just the very first hotel on the south end of the public beaches. And that was, a post-World War II amazing construction a project by the Gill family, which was, the Gill family was very involved in those years, post-World War II hotels, and also a huge amount of home building because the big boom in Fort Lauderdale post-World War II was with the GI Bill and soldiers coming home from World War II that were able to, finance a home that way. So that's kind of how the big boom post-World War II happened here before the movie.
Yes, the Beat Ocean is so iconic with the style of that. Some of those little motels, I don't know if they're still around, but those iconic looks right there at the beach. It's I love the blend of architecture that we have there on Fort Lauderdale Beach. I was looking it up online. It was won Laurel Awards for Best Comedy of the Year, Best Comedy Actress for Paula Presentis. But we were talking to you about the cultural shifts. Oh, I want Arthur to play the clip. So we were researching it, watched the video from 10 years ago when they did the 50th anniversary. And Connie Francis came, if you want to play the video, and when they named the corner of A1A and Los Olas, Connie Francis Corner. So we're going to play that little clip when she was there. And she sang, she got up and she said, "I'm so emotional, I don't know if I can sing or not," but she was so cute in the video. But we want to play that because it's so iconic. If we can get that going. So he's working on that in the background. Yeah. But yes, Fort Lauderdale Beach obviously now is just so much fun. There's always something going on. We've got Pride Fort Lauderdale that goes on down there. There's all the music festivals that go on down there. And just, the shift that we've seen in so much. Of course, COVID has changed things so much, but I think things will, obviously, I know things will come back.
Yeah.
But,
and Connie stayed a Fort Lauderdale resident all these years since the movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
She still lives here.
Yeah. The clip is there on 1A. It pulls it over. So he's going to pull that over.
Okay, perfect. Oh, cool.
Let me share mine. It's this one.
I was actually at this event as a.
Oh, yeah.
I directed Sun Trolley for the city of Fort Lauderdale before I came here. This was a cool event. Really fun. And that's Mayor Zeiler with Connie.
Full screen.
And that's Romney Rogers, who was commissioner back then with, and Bruce Roberts, who was commissioner also, Charlotte Rodstrom. Yeah. Great. Yeah, and Connie's just published a new book.
That was so cute. That was one of my favorite clips. Yeah. So you've got the exhibition coming up. Tell us what's going to be on at the exhibition. It's there at the Gallery of Fort Lauderdale. Tell us about that, Patricia.
So the exhibition is 40 historic photos from both the shoot itself and the production time of the movie, and then post-production, the actual shots of the premiere at the Gateway Theater with the Hollywood folks rolling up with the red carpet and the whole thing. Of course, the shots back then, which are black and whites. So it's kind of a cool artsy look at what Fort Lauderdale Beach looked like in 1960 and 1961. And then, of course, with your comparison is your own experience today, right? So there's a very big difference. But the only thing that I don't think the exhibition shows, or that you kind of have to take my word on it, is the explosion of people that came to Fort Lauderdale Beach after this movie, because it was, and we've all experienced it living here. The little mom and pop hotels that are now been transformed into the Conrad Hilton Hotel and some of the other big, or the W, all those little mom and pop places and when I came as a girl to Fort Lauderdale Beach, that was sort of, all of the hotels on the beach were that way. They were sort of motel drive-ins, they weren't, no parking garages, that was kind of how it was, and think about what's happened to this beach in that time period is pretty amazing. When you think of the Ritz-Carlton and all those huge big hotels that we visit and, go to receptions at and meetings now today. And, the large, some of them large enough to actually have small convention groups in them themselves. It's, it's a totally different picture than the beach of the movie time. And it's kind of fun to think about one Hollywood film that sort of impacted generationally the development of a town. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, how it changed everything. It changed everything. You and I were chatting too before the video about some of the other cultural shifts how not everyone was represented in the film, and I didn't perceive that. If you want to tell us a little bit about what happened maybe a year or two later
Sure.
after the film, because I think that was really fascinating, Patricia, if you want to tell us about that.
And I think it's critically important, particularly with with the current climate of our country. So
Mm-hmm.
the movie itself was on Fort Lauderdale Beach on a segregated white beach. There was no person of color in the movie. So, it kind of, a symptom of the times. And Fort Lauderdale Beach at the time of the recording of the movie or the filming was a segregated whites only beach. And there was what's termed a colored beach where an African American citizen could sunbathe as well. But that was a very restricted site in Dania, which is today the Eula Johnson and Von Mizell State Park. So I immediately after the movie, the very next summer, which would have been exactly at the same time the crew was here filming in 1960. In 1961, Eula Johnson, a very famous African American activist, first female president locally of the NAACP, and Dr. Mizell staged what was called wade-ins, walking into the water. And what they did was they brought a very peaceful group of African American citizens right to that exact same corner, Las Olas and A1A, and they just walked into the waters there. Of course, the police were called. There were, I'm sure there were arrests. I mean, but this was a peaceful civil demonstration by African American citizens of the town who had sort of enough is enough, beach should be for everybody. This is what Fort Lauderdale calls a public beach. So we're part of the public. So that was, and could very likely, I haven't really discussed this with our African American consultants, but it could have been a catalyst, the movie being so popular that there was sort of a final push on the part of the African American leadership locally to do something about this. And it actually did bring the court cases that desegregated Fort Lauderdale Beach and made that the law of the city could no longer, if you restrict people to certain places to experience the beach. A really important piece of legislation when you figure that an African American citizen pre-World War II, if they had a child of college age or high school age, that high school child could not even receive a diploma in Broward County because it was considered that an African American child would not do anything but work in the field or be a day laborer. So they would not need a high school diploma to go on to college. So when you look at these are folks who are still alive today who had this experience, who their parents had to send them to a relative or a friend or a church in Dade County so that their children could get a high school diploma so that they could then apply to go to university. I mean, it's not Civil War times. It's people who are alive today. And then you figure the very famous African American attorney who we just lost last year, George Allen, brought the suit to integrate Broward County schools in 1970. 1970. This is not like ancient history. So, this Jim Crow South, it was very prevalent here. And because so many of us are transplants from the North that didn't have these experiences, I think it's important for us to know that this was the African American experience of Broward County and have some empathy and understanding of the people who had these experiences. So, the movie might have been part of the catalyst, but that 1960s in Fort Lauderdale was a game changer as far as the African American community, with the idea that finally we had integrated schools. Toward the end of that decade, 1970 was when that suit was brought, and that was probably a development through this whole decade of enough is enough. Enough. I mean, we are doing research right here at our museum, getting ready for an African American permanent exhibition. When you figure it was very clearly stated in a 1926 ordinance by the city of Fort Lauderdale, the geographical boundaries of the area that an African American citizen could live. And they could not set outside those boundaries after sunset. I mean, when you realize that those kind of restrictions were placed on people, it gives you a real sense of the injustice of the times, and there are people alive today that had those experiences.
Mhm. I guess we think about almost a repression of COVID and how we've been locked in and all of the parameters that have been forced on us. Those people felt it all the time, and they didn't know when the end was going to be. It's almost maybe some similarities there, but
That's an
and as you and I were,
that's an
yeah,
excellent
as you
comparison.
mhm. And as you and I were chatting before the video, this was basically yesterday in the history of mankind. This was not 200-300 years ago. And if you look at how old some countries are and how old America is, this was yesterday in the history of mankind. This was not, this was just 50, 60 years ago, which someone my age is kind of hard to fathom that this is so close to today. But yes, I almost can't imagine it because COVID was so difficult and having all those parameters, and to think that that was basically the way of life and no one questioned it. It's almost hard to imagine in America.
Well, in
So,
our research,
but
especially on the redlining practices, that ordinance I mentioned, the part of the problem there was that the people who were being restricted by those laws were not economically in a position where they could bring suit against it. The legal folks who are consulting with us have said in 1926, the city attorney would have counseled the city commissioners that that law was illegal because the changes post Civil War to the United States Constitution outlawed that kind of geographical corralling of people, but it was just overlooked. And the whole idea was an African American person wouldn't have the knowledge or the the dollars to bring forth any kind of litigation to challenge that kind of an ordinance. And the first challenge, because this was common across the South, this wasn't just Fort Lauderdale. I mean, these are battles that were fought in multiple towns in multiple places across the South. But that it wasn't until post-World War II that the very first litigation was brought to challenge these restrictive covenants that were in place largely across the South. The Jim Crow laws that had to be shot down one by one post-World War II. So, when you think about it in South Florida today, I mean, I actually live, my son and I actually live in the geographical area that was considered African American in 1926. And it specifically says in the ordinance that no white person may live in this neighborhood. So I kind of went home and told my son, oh my gosh, if it was 26, we wouldn't be allowed to live here. It's like when it's very hard to imagine that today, right? But this is restrictions that were put on people who are still alive today. When I was at Sun Trolley, one of my board members, just an amazing local gentleman, he's also a former president at NAACP. He remembers as a young boy going on that ferry to what they called then the colored beach, where they were, that was the only place an African American person was permitted to go into the ocean in Broward County.
Now, I used to work at the University of Kentucky. I was there for 12 years, and there are large placards and signs across the university for the milestones. And I remember specifically the one that says, and it gives the date in history of when they integrated the University of Kentucky. And I thought, there was a day when that was not permitted, and that was a milestone in the university's history. And just, as a student thinking, I can't imagine it would be, but there was a time and place. And then when that changed, and it was interesting to see that, that in writing when they had to do it. But people need to come see your exhibition at the Galleria. That was a game-changing movie. It turned Fort Lauderdale just on its ear in so many ways. I want Arthur to put up the website. It's there on the Galleria Fort Lauderdale's website. The movie's a lot of fun. And so you've got just this great exhibition, Patricia. I'm really glad that you put this together and to celebrate this. Unfortunately, we can't have the big bash on the beach this year like they did before. We were watching the video before, and one of the people they interviewed said he was an extra in the movie, as you were saying, and he said my job was to sit on the beach and drink beer, and I got paid for it. And that was really cute.
It is good.
Yeah. So tell us the dates of when people can go see the exhibition and where it is in the mall.
Sure. Okay. So in the Galleria, this is right by Swarovski's Crystal, and I'm sure folks will be able to guide you there because they have wonderful staff. But the exhibition opens on the 3rd of December and continues through January 3rd. So it's a full month, and it's kind of a neat sort of sneak peek into the beach we know and love today, but how it's been completely transformed today. So it's kind of cool to see now and then, before and after kind of photos of Fort Lauderdale Beach. So, and I'd be really excited to hear comments from your audience, who maybe have a chance to see it, and, what they're interested in seeing, because our collection is over 400,000 historic photos. So
Wow.
this is not the only collection we've got.
No.
So there's lots of other things to see and sort of experience post current day, kind of a before and after. So we're happy to have folks go visit there and leave their comments, and any comments that come through to you, I hope you'll forward to me so we can respond to folks.
Absolutely. Is there a charge to see the exhibition, or?
Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
It's open. So if you're going shopping, you have to go by, especially because you can wander through and see it. I know where the space is there. So This is great. We're going to put up your website, your social media, so people can view it. Your historyfortlauderdale.org, so people can see it online. There's more information. Website, social media, and I could carrier pigeon and toucans on a string, or however they want to get in touch with you. But this has been a joy. We could talk all day. There's so much fascinating history here. And we'll learn more about your locations and about your exhibitions coming. We'll maybe have some LGBT issues, but we work with all kinds of people. So, I was a math major in college, so learning all of the history is fascinating for me because it's all added to my knowledge base. So our email or our connection is, if you want to text OCQ to 22828 to get on our email list. Patricia, is there anything you wanted to add or cover that I didn't ask before we wrap it up?
No, just if folks have a chance to see the exhibition, getting comments, and be sure and watch our social media or website for our other cool, really exhibitions coming up.
Okay, you all have a lot of fascinating things and so many different areas. There's a lot to explore. So with you, thank you for joining us, everyone. And again, go see the exhibition on Where the Boys Are. It's a fascinating slice of Fort Lauderdale history. Go by and see it. Go by. Patricia might be there. She might give you a tour one day. So, all right, everyone, have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.